Tonight on Bridge City News, it's April Fool's Day. We have a look at how this day came to be and when a prank can go too far. The Lethbridge Hurricanes have forced a Game 7 after a thrilling overtime win in Calgary last night. And NDP leader Rachel Notley and UCP leader Jason Kenney have come out with their platforms. We will explain where each leader is focusing their priorities.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Today is April Fool's Day. Make sure you keep it above the belt, stop short of total humiliation, and if possible, mix in some irony. A good prank involves good stagecraft, but BCN's Loris Alexander explains it also requires emotional intuition.
Psychologists have studied pranks for years, often in the context of harassment and bullying. Yet practical jokes are far more commonly an effort to bring a person into a group.
To have a good prank, you have to have two people, right? You have to have the person who's doing the prank and the person that's receiving the prank. So you have to make sure they kind of have the same ideas and the same culture and the same aspects about it that way. And then you can kind of make sure people are engaged.
Chelsea calls a good prank one which can deliver humor without offense.
You'd have to see what they were, if they knew the person really well and what they would know what their boundaries and limitations are, because that's usually when the prank goes too far, if it's violating somebody's personal boundaries.
Chelsea also thinks the experience of being playfully duped can be a kind of flattery in some ways.
Well, today, a few rebels in the office decided to take it upon themselves to prank everybody. And so far they feel very successful, judging by their smiles. And I'm glad they feel that way because the day is far from over. It
gets people to be social in some aspects, engage with people maybe they don't normally get to, or to have fun with their colleagues or their family and share in that social aspect of it.
But a good prank is a simulation of a crisis and not the real thing. It serves as a valuable reminder that not every precious box contains the treasure you might expect. For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
Many of us have been affected by cancer or know someone who has. A fraternity at the University of Lethbridge has partnered with Alberta Cancer Foundation, and as Ainsley O'Reilly explains, some of the students went all out today, shaving their heads for a great cause.
The Kappa Sigma fraternity is in their 13th year of fundraising for cancer research. Students have been collecting donations and shaving their heads. Last year, the proceeds went to the Canadian Cancer Society. But this year, they wanted to fundraise for a more local cancer center.
So we went with the Alberta Cancer Foundation, and then all the proceeds that we raised this year, it's going towards the local Jack 80 Cancer Center. It's just located in the Southside Hospital, like in Lethbridge. It's the largest and the only treatment facility south of Calgary, so for Southern Albertans, it's really important.
Before each person shaved their heads, they made personal dedications to who they were for. It seems that every single person had been impacted by the disease.
This year I dedicated it to my mother. Back in October, she was diagnosed with brain cancer and has been fighting strong ever since. So this one's to you, Mom.
My Nana passed away back in, I was around 2006 with cancer. So definitely that had a large impact on me, me and my family.
About 30 students participated in the fundraiser, some of which had been growing out their hair for several years. One 6th grade girl decided to stop by and shave her head.
I was excited because I like trying new things. Also, I was a little bit nervous because it was a big change. I don't know, I just like helping people.
Between door knocking, raffle prizes, sponsors, and walk-up donations, the Kappa Sigma fraternity raised nearly $18,000 for their cause. For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Lethbridge firefighters braved the elements over the weekend on top of Hudson's Tap House to raise money for muscular dystrophy. In the end, the firefighters raised $17,630, which surpassed their goal of $10,000. All of the participants were new to the cause and were spending the 72 hours on the roof for the first time. The firefighters say the event wouldn't have been a huge success without the community support through donations, volunteers, and local business owners who sponsored the event to help provide meals. The Lethbridge Hurricanes came up with a huge 7-6 overtime victory in Calgary against the Hitmen last night. Taylor Ross had the game winner for the Canes. The win forces Game 7 tomorrow night at the Nicholas Sharon Arena. Now here's what you need to know about the game. Parking will be limited, but a courtesy shuttle and free parking will be available at the University of Lethbridge. Doors will open at 6 and game time is 7 p.m. No walk-up tickets will be available for the game. If your ticket says Game C, D, or E, it is not valid. It must specifically say Nicholas Sharon Game 2 in order to be valid. The World Men's Curling Championships continue at the NMAX Centre in Lethbridge. Canada took on Norway today. We'll play Germany on Tuesday before a tougher schedule kicks in for the Cooey foursome. Round-robin play continues through Friday night, with 6 teams advancing to the weekend playoffs. Last year, Canada's Brad Gushue lost in the finals in Las Vegas. Kevin Cooey last won world titles in 2010 and 2016. You will have a chance to get to know the candidates who are running in the Lethbridge East riding tomorrow night as we head toward the April 16th provincial election. An all-candidates forum will be taking place at the main branch of the Public Library. The event runs from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. Then on Thursday, the Lethbridge West candidates will be fielding questions from residents and the media. Watch for Bridge City News since we'll be at both events. UCP candidate Nathan Newdorf is running in Lethbridge East. I asked Nathan how he reconciles his faith with running as a provincial politician.
At this point, there really becomes a differentiation between who I am and the job that I do, which is to represent the majority of people in Lethbridge East. And that integrity, my own principles, is to do that job well. So regardless, if I can, the onus is on me to find out what the majority of people believe and what they want represented. So it becomes less about me and more about them.
Catch my entire interview with Lethbridge East UCP candidate Nathan Newdorf as he discusses what it'll take for the UCP to win on April 16th. That's coming up after business news. UCP leader Jason Kenney released his party's platform heading into the provincial election. He says it focuses on what Albertans want, which are jobs, the economy, and pipelines. The platform promises to get Alberta's books out of the red and into a $714 million surplus by 2023, a year earlier than the NDP. Kenney says at 117 pages, he's been told it's the longest and most detailed platform ever for an Alberta election campaign. It promises to replace the carbon tax with a program targeting large emitters of greenhouse gases. Kenney also says he will look at equalization payments should he become premier.
Here's what I propose to do. We use a new power the Supreme Court gave provinces in 1998 in a decision called the Quebec Secession Reference. Basically, it says if a province holds a referendum on a constitutional question and a clear majority votes in favor, it imposes an obligation on the federal government to negotiate that issue with the province in good faith. So I would hold a referendum here, and I'd try to get Saskatchewan to do one concurrent with us, that would give the provincial government a mandate to renegotiate the equalization formula to make it fairer, to stop the automatic increases, and to remove non-renewable resource revenues. Those two changes would dramatically reduce our equalization payment.
Alberta NDP leader Rachel Notley has unveiled her party's platform for the April 16th provincial election. She's promising to expand the $25 a day daycare, build more long-term care beds for seniors, and new schools. The platform also promises to balance the budget by 2023-2024. Jason Nixon, the UCP House leader, says the NDP will continue to run deficits or hike taxes and will most likely do both. The carbon tax has been in effect in Alberta since January 1st of 2017, but today it kicked in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and New Brunswick. Ontario Premier Doug Ford's PC government is fighting the tax in court, saying he does not trust Ottawa to make good on its promise to provide rebates. He says the carbon tax will hurt many Canadian families.
That's what the federal government is doing to every single business, no matter if it's small, large, or medium. The burden on the backs of every single individual in this country is going to be hurt. It makes us less competitive when we try to compete anywhere in the world. And nobody trusts the federal government when they cross their fingers and they say they will eventually, that's the magical word, eventually give money back to us. I've yet to see governments give money back. Today, our economy faces new threats. We cannot afford the risk of a carbon tax recession because the truth is clear. You can be for a carbon tax or you can be for jobs.
The carbon tax will add more than 4 cents a litre to gas. It will also drive up the cost of natural gas, propane, butane, and aviation fuel. Meanwhile, here in Alberta, as I mentioned, the carbon tax has been in effect since 2017. An Alberta-wide pruning ban is now in place for all species of elm trees. Pruning elm trees during this time will expose them to the elm bark beetles, which carry a deadly fungus. The ban is in effect now until September 30th. Symptoms of Dutch elm disease include wilting leaves which curl up and turn brown. If you suspect a tree that may have the disease, call the provincial hotline at 1-877-837-ELMS or 1-877-837-3567. The 2019 census kicked off in Lethbridge today. Expect to see a census taker showing up at your door over the next few days. You'll be asked to answer a few short questions. Now make sure the person showing up at your door has photo ID. You can also complete your census online. Watch for the cards in the mail, which will contain personal identification numbers, allowing you to fill out the information the city requires online. Deputy City Clerk David Sarsfield says the census is needed to maximize the per capita funding Lethbridge receives from both the provincial and federal governments. The money will go towards projects like the new West Lethbridge Fire Station and Legacy Park in North Lethbridge. Alberta health officials are warning people in Calgary that they may have been exposed to measles last week at a hospital and several outpatient labs. The HS says a person with lab-confirmed measles may have exposed people at the Peter Lougheed Centre Emergency Department and its outpatient centre last week. Exposures may have also occurred at various lab locations and at a McDonald's. The health agency is asking people who may not be protected from measles to attend an immunization clinic at Brentwood Mall in Calgary tomorrow. A ceremony was held at the National War Memorial in Ottawa, marking the 5th anniversary of the end of Canada's mission in Afghanistan. Canada's Chief of Defence Staff, General Jonathan Vance, says the country is still learning how to best care for those who were wounded during the Afghan war.
We cannot ever forget that warfare takes its toll and always will. This war took a physical toll of dead and wounded and took a mental toll on many people left behind that may not appear wounded, but they are. And so when a nation commits its troops to combat, there will be casualties. And we took casualties, and we learned a great deal and are still learning on how best to take care of them in the aftermath of this warfare. Our country rediscovered the toughness and fighting spirit of the Canadian Armed Forces again after perhaps an absence for some years. I think we all rediscovered a certain confidence in our own abilities. We know what we're for, we know what we're about, we know that we need good leadership, good troops, good equipment, and whatever mission we are tasked with, we'll do our very best at it.
We had kind of a mixed bag today. Clouds mixed with sunshine. The mercury will be climbing. Complete weather details are coming up. We had some clouds and light showers in some regions in southwestern Alberta today. Tonight, a chance of rain mixed with snow and a low near -2. Tomorrow, mainly cloudy with a high expected near 11. Wednesday, mainly sunny and a high near 12. Warming up even more on Thursday with a high near 16. Friday, lots of sunshine again with a high near 18. Pretty much the same picture on Saturday. Sunday, only 1 degree cooler at 17 degrees. Checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 10 and an average low of -4. The highest temperature on this date was recorded in 1966 at 20 degrees, and the record low was -21 in 1975. Sunrise was at 7:09, sunset at 8:01. Looking at tomorrow's forecast across the country now, Victoria will have a mixture of sun and cloud and should see a high near 19. Just a few clouds and 17 is on tap for Vancouver. Mainly sunny and 7 for Calgary tomorrow. A chance of flurries and 4 degrees for Edmonton. Light snow and +1 for Regina on Tuesday. Pretty much the same picture in Saskatoon. Winnipeg will have flurries and +1 as well. Toronto, which was dealt a spring snowstorm over the weekend, should see a high of 6 degrees tomorrow. Mainly cloudy and 6 as well for our nation's capital. A mixture of sun and cloud and 8 degrees for Montreal. Over in the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick will be mainly sunny and 8. Lots of sunshine is expected in Halifax, Nova Scotia and 7. Charlottetown, PEI will be mainly sunny and 6 degrees. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect a partly cloudy sky and a high near 3 degrees tomorrow. Ottawa says it is looking into subsidizing farmers hit by China's $2 billion ban on Canadian canola imports. Agriculture Minister Marie-Claude Bebeau said the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is having ongoing conversations with Chinese customs officials. Bebeau says the conversations are based on science in order to validate China's claim it found hazardous organisms in the recent shipments of 2 major Canadian canola exporters. China's decision is widely seen as retaliation for Canada's arrest of Meng Wanzhou, the daughter of the founder of telecom giant Huawei, at the request of the United States. Shares of Lyft are tumbling in its first full day of trading as a public company. Shares fell 10% earlier today, hitting levels below its initial offering price of $72 on Friday. The ride-hailing company has been losing money, raising doubts about its overall valuation. Some investors were wowed by the company's growth in the past couple of years. There are a lot of scams out there right now. Fraudsters are reaching out via text messages, phone calls, and even emails. There are CRA scams, home improvement scams, even romance scams. Ron Riemann is with the Better Business Bureau here in Southern Alberta, and he explains the best way to protect yourself from a scammer.
It sounds so cliche, but follow your gut. Your gut will always tell you if this is too good to be true, and that's the old adage. And we always have to remember that we always have the power to either hang up the phone, slam the door, or put that email link in the recycle bin.
Catch the full interview with Mr. Riemann discussing in detail some of the biggest scams you need to watch out for. That's coming up after business news. An executive at Siemens UK is calling on British lawmakers to unite around a compromise Brexit deal. MPs are holding a series of votes in an attempt to find a way forward after voting to reject Prime Minister Theresa May's divorce deal 3 times. The UK has just 12 days to come up with a new plan or crash out of the European Union. May has ruled out holding a second referendum on Brexit or staying in the EU customs union. Siemens CEO Jürgen Meyer says political chaos is making Britain a laughingstock and is urging lawmakers to keep the UK in a customs union with the EU to allow trade to continue. Now, here's a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the Lethbridge Hurricanes came up with a huge 7-6 overtime victory in Calgary against the Hitmen last night. Taylor Ross had the game winner for the Canes. The win forces a Game 7 tomorrow night, 7 p.m. at the Nicholas Sharon Arena. Coming up, a one-on-one interview with Lethbridge East UCP candidate Nathan Neudorf, who discusses what some of the biggest issues are for him as we head into the provincial election. But first, here's a look at what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Come for a special celebration event called Gideon's Banquet on Friday, April 12th, beginning at 6:30 p.m. at My Victory Lethbridge, hosted by the Gideon's Lethbridge chapter. Enjoy an evening of delicious food, fellowship, live music featuring Carlin Fair and family, plus see a special screening of the powerful documentary, The Samson Project. Tickets are $25 each. To purchase, contact Bill at 403-328-4244. If you're looking for a new-to-you bike, come out to the Lethbridge Bike Swap at Exhibition Park's North Pavilion on Saturday, April 27th. Sell, buy, or donate a bike. Admission is $2 for adults, and kids 12 and under are free. Bikes can be dropped off at 9 a.m. Find all kinds of used bikes that are refurbished or can be purchased as is. For more information, visit albertabikeswap.ca. Big Brothers Big Sisters in Lethbridge is searching for volunteers to mentor children and youth in their various programs. Volunteers commit anywhere from 1 hour a week to 1 full year. They have many kids on their wait list that are looking for a big brother or sister. Make a difference in a child's life and start something big. For more information, call 403-328-9355 or email info.leth@bigbrothersbigsisters.ca. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
The provincial election is coming up April 16th, and we want to hear from all of the Lethbridge candidates. Joining me now in studio is Nathan Newdorf, the UCB candidate for Lethbridge East. Welcome to Bridge City News, Nathan.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time.
Well, you bet. So explain to our viewers a little bit about who Nathan Newdorf is.
Sure. I'm a family man. My wife and I have 5 children. We've lived in Lethbridge for almost 25 years. She's an ER nurse in town, and I've spent a lot of time working in construction, had a number of my own businesses, and really felt that I could represent a large proportion of Lethbridge by having a blue-collar attitude, having a background where so many of our constituents can relate to that. They have small businesses, they have families, they're working in a small community. Even though Lethbridge is a city and we have some challenges as a city in transition, almost everybody here has had some experience with farms, with construction, small business, that kind of attitude and that kind of experience, and I want to really represent that well.
Yeah, we have a lot of the traits here, definitely. But let me ask you something, Nathan. You are a believer. How do you reconcile your faith with becoming a politician? Some people say you really can't harmonize the two.
I have no problem reconciling those two attributes of my life. I believe it is the basis for the character and who I want to be. So openness, honesty, integrity, hard work, those kind of characteristics, values, that so many people in Southern Alberta have to live with every day. That's the basis of who I am, and that's the basis of how I will handle every situation. People have disagreements on viewpoints, on issues, on challenges, but I truly believe that having the respect of an individual forefront in my mind, I can hear them, I can listen to their concerns, and I can address those concerns. It's not always going to be exactly what they want to hear, but I absolutely believe that that character basis allows me to do any job, especially politics, in a way that people will know that they're being honestly represented.
So let me ask you something. Let's say, you know, the Holy Spirit's speaking to your heart and there's certain things that Jason Kenney wants you to do to toe the party line that maybe go against your principle. How do you deal with that?
Well, at this point, there really becomes a differentiation between who I am and the job that I do, which is to represent the majority of people in Lethbridge East. And that integrity, my own principles, is to do that job well. So regardless, if I can, the onus is on me to find out what the majority of people believe and what they want represented. So it becomes less about me and more about them. That's the hard work, because in our day and age, it's very easy for any small specialist group or
special interest group,
any minority, to have a very, very loud voice. And that tends to be more the disruption than the silent majority. So I think the onus is on me to work very hard, to go to the doors, to meet people, to hear their story, and represent them well. That's what the job is truly about. It's not just about me. And yes, I've joined the party with Jason Kenney. Yes, I believe in the principles, policies that they've put forward. But at the end of the day, whoever's elected, that color, that hat fades away, and they become the representative of Lethbridge East as a whole.
Hey, you've knocked on thousands of doors.
Yes, I have.
Thousands of doors,
Yes.
right? What are some of the big issues and concerns that people are bringing to you?
There is an overwhelming focus on jobs, the economy, pipelines, and then there's also the issues that are more specific to Lethbridge and Lethbridge East, whether it's the consumption site, whether it's medical concerns and needs. But again, almost all of these issues in some way, shape, or form relate back to our economy, our debt position, our deficit position. How are we going to pay for all of these things that we need? And that's where responsible fiscal attitudes and decisions will set us up well to address those areas.
Let's talk about that safe consumption and injection site. We've had the mayor on here many times, and he's very supportive of it. Many people are, because they have programs, nurses there, help people who may OD come back with naloxone so they don't die. But at the same time, I talk to other families that say, no, we're just being enablers. We're just enabling them to come.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about this safe injection site here in Lethbridge?
So I've talked to, again, thousands of people, business owners, police officers, nurses, EMS, and had a really on-the-ground viewpoint of that. We have an opioid crisis, but what is our comprehensive plan? I feel that we really reacted to one element of a 4-pillar drug enforcement strategy. Harm reduction, we've all heard that term, and that was the intent behind it. But there's also prevention. What do we have for that? There's enforcement. How have we supported our police service to actually manage this? And treatment, we're missing that step. Yes, we've talked about the Intox site coming to town. And before the UCP does any kind of absolute decision on that, we want to take a full, broad spectrum consultative process, talk to the city, talk to those businesses right downtown, talk to the police service, the EMS, the ER, doctors, and have a plan in place before we do any knee-jerk reaction in spending, throwing good money after bad. What's the end goal? What's the plan? How do we best build that plan so we're doing the most effective job that we can? Because if it doesn't include helping people who are down and out, who are addicted to some of these drugs that are coming to town, if we can't get them off of that, what are we doing? We are doing some of that enabling, and there are a number of nonprofit groups in town that are really addressing those issues very, very well with their limited resources. How do we engage that part of our community and allow them a voice into it, because they've been doing it for years?
You know, let's talk healthcare. A city the size of Lethbridge, we have 100,000 people, 1 cardiologist.
Yeah.
That's unheard of. Any other city I've lived in Canada, you've got at least 5 or 6. I mean, that's just incredible. What are we going to do to address those issues and attract those specialists to come to southwestern Alberta?
Exactly. So this is something I'm very passionate about. My wife is an ER nurse in town, and this is again alluding to the fact that Lethbridge is a small city with some big city problems. If we truly want to represent Lethbridge well, and indeed even large portion of southern Alberta, I think Lethbridge needs to be that medical hub. We do need a cath lab. I've a very close friend who was up in Edmonton who had a heart attack. And if he hadn't been able to get to that specialized service within 45 minutes, the outcome would have been very, very difficult and very, very different than what it is now. So having a cath lab in Lethbridge, having a STARS helicopter based out of Lethbridge, having an urgent care facility to alleviate the absolute pressure that our ER services face every day, those are critical needs for Lethbridge. They're not within the party platform, but that's something that I take seriously to advocate on behalf of Lethbridge, to see that we are recognized for the services that we do. We get lots of diversion of healthcare patients from municipalities and regions all the way into southern BC. This is something that we're going to have to face.
Premier Rachel Notley was in town recently with a big announcement that 2,000 more extended care beds will be open across the province, which is wonderful. Our seniors here are pretty pumped about that.
Yes.
So what plan does the UCP have in place, and what's close to your heart to help a lot of our seniors?
Again, Lethbridge is a very, very diverse city with a lot of seniors. How do we pay for that? How do we pay for those 2,000 beds? We're running deficits into the billions, double-digit billions over the last 4 years. We have a ballooning debt on its way to $100 billion. Promises are one thing, action is something else. So the UCP has the most comprehensive plan for action to reignite our economy. So we have the funds to make consistent, stable change, particularly for seniors. We have an action plan for our economy to bring those costs back down, whether it's the carbon tax, whether it's other taxes that they feel. It's the trickle-down effect at the price we see at the pumps. It's the price we see for a loaf of bread, for the bare essentials that so many seniors on fixed income need. So again, that's an economic question. Promises are one thing, but action on the economy is even more crucial.
I'm glad you brought up the economy. Carbon tax, 2 words.
Yes.
Some Albertans it resonates because we're doing our part for the environment. It's about climate change. With other Albertans, a lot of business owners I've spoken to say this is really hurting us.
Yeah.
We had Dan McTagg, former Liberal MP, now with GasBuddy.com on our show recently as well.
Right.
He says if Jason Kenney does repeal the carbon tax, that'll mean 7.1 cents a litre savings at the pumps.
Yes.
That's at the pumps as well.
Yes.
But there's also businesses, running their businesses, having to pay huge bucks in carbon tax.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts in regards to the carbon tax? What are business owners telling you?
Business owners are telling me that the tax is just one more burden on their business. It makes the amount of the margin that they have to work with to hire staff, to invest in their businesses, that much more difficult. We've seen quite a number of local businesses, small service industry, restaurants, mom and pop stores and shops really hit hard by that carbon tax. Again, seniors have hit that hard. I've talked to numerous seniors' homes where they're paying an exorbitant amount for a carbon tax, and not everybody there gets a rebate. So then that's just pushing up their cost of living. To repeal that tax will be one of the strongest messages we can send that we're fighting for Albertans. The problem with the carbon tax is to actually make a difference on the environment, you need to keep moving that number up so that people change their behavior. Moving it up to a rate of possibly 10 times what it is now at $30 a ton up to $300, which would cost the average Albertan family $600 a month. Where we have a study across Canada from a month or two back saying that 49% of Canadians are $200 away from not being able to pay their bills. So do we really want governments, whether it's provincial or federal, to nearly bankrupt half of our population on a tax that has not yet made an impact on the climate change? So these are serious issues. We believe that innovation, technology, empowering our businesses and our research and development will make more of an impact on carbon emissions and climate change than punishing our population.
What about a plan for university and college students? Today, college is just as expensive as university in many instances. You know, these poor kids, they're graduating, honor student, they're in debt $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. They need help.
They do.
How can the UCP, what's the plan to help a lot of these post-secondary education students?
I've been asked that question a number of times before, and my biggest concern for them is to be able to get a job in the field that they studied, to be able to find employment for what they've just invested 2, 3, 4 years of their lives getting into. That relates back to economy. I think most students, most people have a sense of pride, a sense of self-worth. They've gone to school and worked hard. They want to see that hard work recognized, paid off by having a job, not by having a handout. That does nothing for their mental health. It does nothing for their resilience. It does nothing for us as a society. But having those jobs available, when the economy is doing well, we see diversity, we see growth, we see innovation, we see them coming out going, I had 5 opportunities. I had job fairs. I had somebody headhunt me and hire me because of my skill sets and my learning and the work ethic I've shown.
So would it be a corporate tax break for those businesses to be able to hire more people? What are your thoughts then?
There is some of that, yeah. We do have 2 initiatives for business. One is the job creation tax cut, so that businesses, again, have that competitive edge. And the other is red tape reduction, where they get a chance to get through the barriers that really limit them as a business so they can move ahead on jobs more quickly. Those 2 things allow them to expand, allow them to grow, and then have jobs. That's what we really want to focus on.
The UCP announced that they're going back to the 2014 Alberta Education Act, which I believe still allows the GSA clubs in schools, but does allow teachers to let parents know if their child is participating in a GSA. That's a major no-no with the NDP. They say, no, the child needs to be protected and respected. The child will let the parent know when they're ready to say, you know, that they're in a GSA. So what are your thoughts in regards to GSA?
These are very, very serious issues. And we, as the United Conservative Party, want to represent and protect all vulnerable children, not just some. And we recognize that every child is unique, every situation is unique. So who is the best person in that instance to determine how that situation should be handled? Is it a government? Is it a politician? Or is it the teacher, the educators, the staff on site, on the ground, right there and then? So we are taking a very middle-of-the-road approach. We are not supporting mandated conversations between teachers and parents, and nor are we mandating silence. Both of those hamstring teachers with the ability to do what's best. What happens if there's specific circumstances with those children that they need that additional help? What if the caregiver is not a parent but it's a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle? What if it's a split family where one parent would be well advised to know what's going on and one not? Legislation either way creates a blanket legislation scenario that really limits educators. I trust our teachers. I trust our teachers to work on the behalf of the best interests of that child. And we want legislation that allows that trust to be put forward so that teachers can react to each situation individually, just as individual as each child is.
Teachers I've talked to as well say class sizes, they're being overrun.
They are.
Way too many students.
Yes, it's
you know,
a
30,
challenge.
Sometimes 40 students per teacher.
Yeah.
You know,
So
and the educational assistants are not available. So what's the next step? What's the plan moving forward?
Again, this circles back, it's an economic question. How do we fund this? How do we support teachers? How do we create efficiencies? Even though we are spending amongst the top of all provinces in Canada money on our education dollars. So how do we do that more efficiently? More money is part of the answer, but spending it efficiently is even a better part of that. So we want to bring in a review process that allows us to see, how do we do that? We've committed to consistent and increased funding for infrastructure for schools, that kind of thing as well. But we need to look at the front lines and say, how do we support that? How do we do that better so we can meet those needs? Spending money endlessly without the income on the other side puts us in a troubling spot.
We only have about a minute left here, Nathan. I want to ask you, rural crime. We have a lot of farming families across southwestern Alberta,
Yes.
and that's a real issue here.
Absolutely.
How is the UCP going to address that?
The UCP has recently rolled out a 16-point plan to address rural crime by hiring more prosecutors, by giving more resources to those police services, by making sure that we represent and recognize the property rights of landowners. They've invested their entire lives on many of these farms. They're generational. And the value of that, the value of their personal rights, the value of their family, we want to protect that, define that, and resource the funds to be able to protect that so we don't have a consistent wheel of offenders repeating these same kind of acts.
UCP candidate for Lethbridge East, Nathan Neudorf, thanks so much for joining me in studio.
Thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate that.
The Better Business Bureau of Canada has come out with a list of the top 10 fraudulent scams that are ripping Canadians off on a large scale. Joining me now to talk about it is Ron Raymond, an accredited business coach with the Lethbridge branch of the Better Business Bureau. Welcome back to BCN, Ron.
Good to be here, Hal. Thank you.
Last year, Canadians lost over $121 million to scammers.
Amazing.
That's double the amount from 2015.
Yes.
So why is this happening? What's going on?
I don't know why it's happening. I think more or less the marketers, or rather the fraudsters and the scammers, are more slick. They're more intelligent for the wrong reasons, and we seem to fall for the traps that these marketers seem to ploy against us.
Now, apparently, only 5% of people who've been scammed report the crime. Why is the number so low?
I guess one of the reasons, the biggest reasons why that happens, Hal, is because there's a bit of a shame in what's happening, especially for the elderly people who lose a lot of their life savings. How do you explain that to their sons and daughters and their grandchildren, for that matter? So they try and keep it low key, but of course what happens is that it does finally catch up to the family because money's not there and they have to pay the bill still, and so it's the shame. It's the shame that really kind of makes it very, very low key for them.
So who are the other people who are most vulnerable? Seniors, would maybe students, or maybe even new immigrants to our country?
Immigrants as well as teenagers. Teenagers, of course, when they go out into the work field and they get a new job and they're trying to create a new life for themselves professionally and personally. And they find that they want to, not all of them, but some of them want to get quick, rich scheme, when they want to get money very fast. Mm-hmm. And of course they'll listen to a pitch if it sounds too good. Even if it's too good to be true, they'll fall for it. And they're an age bracket that's very vulnerable right now too.
So Ron, bottom line, what should somebody do if they've been scammed? What's the first step? Maybe take us on a variety of steps.
There are a number of steps that you can possibly do if it does happen to you. If you feel like you've been taken, there are a number of things you should do first. First, if it's a local issue, if it's somebody physically that came to your house or phoned you, if you know that person or that business that possibly came to your door or telephoned you, get the local police involved. They may be able to help. Unfortunately, if it's out of province, out of country, or out of North America for that reason, they can help. We can help. The Better Business Bureau, Anti-Fraud Center, of course, can help as well. And also, we encourage them to talk about it because we need to get this information out to the public. We need to, like you and I talking about this right now, we need to let people know about what's going on. And we put out these press releases once a week if anything is fraudulently going on into our community. So we encourage people, as much as they don't want to do this because they feel shamed, we invite them to talk to us, because it's marketers are so slick, like I said earlier. Another good reason is to make sure that don't feel shame, because they are good at what they do. They know what to say. They have their sheets right in front of them. They know what to say next when they get a response from yourself.
Except when it comes to the CRA scam, they say the cops are going to come arrest you at your door.
That's right.
I've received that call, you've received the call, and but hey, we can make this all go away if you pay with iTunes gift cards. Like, what? Come on.
I know, iTunes gift cards, right? And we can talk a little bit about those iTunes gift cards and why they're so popular now. But before we get to that, the CRA, of course, they are a government agency. So when you get a phone call from somebody apparently from the CRA, you would think they would talk more professional about this. But we talked off camera about sometimes these phone callers from the CRA would talk very laid back or very unprofessional. And that should be a red flag. But unfortunately, some people get caught up on the scare tactics that they throw to the listener, to the point where it's like they're terrified, because most of, not all the time, these listeners, these consumers have done nothing wrong in terms of breaking the law or cheated on their taxes, for that matter. So they automatically, they pull out their wallet, because of course the cops are just around the corner, as they like to call it, cops. And of course that's not true. And one big tip to always realize with the CRA, they will not phone you unless you specifically ask in your tax returns with your accountant that you want to get a phone call. They will always email you, or they will provide a snail mail response all the time.
One of the top scams involves romance? Why don't you tell me a bit about that?
Romance is one of those trickier things that most of it is done online. The activity, that is. The scammers and the fraudsters will put on a painted picture of not themselves, but a picture of someone who they're not, and of course a name and how old they are and what they actually do. It's all make-believe in terms of trying to put on this best impression for this would-be person that you want to bilk as many thousands of dollars as you possibly can. And what happens is that some people will fall for it, and the scammer is trying to build that trust into that listener, and they do that over a long period of time, perhaps 6 to 8 weeks. And when it gets to the point where they know they can trust that person, then they'll bring in the monetary discussion. And just a few years ago, there was an incident in Alberta, northern Alberta. I believe Camrose or Wetaskiwin, and the poor lady was billed over $80,000.
Wow.
And one piece of advice: if it happens to somebody who wants to meet this person, do it in a public place. If they are who they think they are and they're the real deal, have them meet at a coffee shop or meet at a restaurant. So just to make sure that they
take the necessary precautions.
Exactly.
Right? Ron, it sounds like with some of these scams, we really have to check our emotions at the door, don't we?
We sure do. A lot of times we have to kind of look at the big picture and say, is this, I tell consumers who phone me over the phone, and I say, it sounds so cliche, but follow your gut. Mm-hmm. Your gut will always tell you if this is too good to be true, and that's the old adage. And we always have to remember that we always have the power to either hang up the phone, slam the door, or put that email link in the recycle bin. And just always remember that reputable companies, especially if they come to your door, they'll give you time to think about a purchase if you are interested, instead of the very heavy sales tactic part of it. Reputable companies will phone you the next day and say, hey, listen, can I call you and say, maybe get your answer, let you sleep on it, and that sort of thing. So to summarize again, you've got the power. Hang up the phone if you have to.
How about some of the online purchasing scams that are out there right now? Let's talk a bit about those.
The biggest one right now is skin creams. We get a ton of ladies, at least I have, my office has been phoning my office in terms of skin cream products. And they get it through magazines or television infomercials, and whereas you get this free product, or you get a product that practically it's next to nothing, and it comes to your door, and you think that, well, I've just got this free product, so I'm done with it, and man, it's not too bad, but I don't want to buy it anymore. But what happens is that you don't read the fine print, and they'll start shipping out some more of that skin cream, unaware that they're also dinging your credit card at the same time. And the fine print, the terms and conditions are never mentioned, although, when you look at those small wordings on the bottom of the screen, it just says right there, of course, who can read it. But a lot of people just are unaware that, oh, well, I guess I got more free cream. This is just wonderful until they get their bank statement.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
So what happens is they phone the credit card company, and of course they're going to say, well, maybe not. You may have to phone the company. You phone the company. Of course, they're not from Canada. They're from the United States. And if you're lucky enough to get them on the phone, and if you're lucky enough to have them cancel your subscription, which is a great thing, but sometimes it doesn't happen that way.
How about just cancel the credit card?
Cancel the credit card is probably the fastest thing to do right now.
How about employment scams? Some of those are floating out there too, right?
Yeah, and what happens is that they're through a magazine or an internet page. On the side of the page, it'll say, for $100,000 we can make you manager, and this apply now. You can become a manager of so and so. You can make this much working with us. And what happens is that these companies here, they won't do any sort of check on you. They won't do any sort of background check. They'll just offer you the job, but they also want a processing fee before they hire you. And of course, that's a red flag right in itself right there.
Isn't there also the fear of identity theft too? You give them all your personal information?
Another big thing right there too.
Right?
Yeah, you pass on a lot of the personal information. And of course, the bottom line is that if they're not going to get money from you, at least they want to get your personal information from you.
And we've all heard the term phishing scams.
Yes.
And we're not talking about going for trout or salmon.
No.
So what exactly is a phishing scam?
A phishing scam is a phishing scam basically is using a very popular logo of perhaps any company in North America, plastering it on an email, plastering on a snail mail, any sort of correspondence. And basically what they want is information from you, because let's say, for example, it's a bank, one of the national banks. The national bank could probably say that we've noticed there's unscrupulous behavior going on right now. We'd like to make sure that it's coming from your account number. We want to verify it's true or not. Can we make sure that it is true by giving us a call or hit the link, and we'll be able to verify that it's yourself. And of course, that's just one step closer of getting into your personal information. That's all it is.
Now, advance fee loans came in at number 7 on your top 10 list. What are they all about?
Well, you know that most advance fee lenders are licensed here in the province of Alberta, but sometimes you'll get those phone calls, or sometimes you'll get those emails where they can perhaps offer you $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, whatever amount of money, and on top, they'll say, give us the $500 for a processing fee, and we'll give you $15,000, $20,000 as money for whatever you want to do with. And of course, that's another example of getting more of your personal information. We know that it's illegal for anybody to ask for money up front before you get your money yourself from a loan company. So be aware of that, and always go to the reputable lenders here in this province here, because they do a good job of what they're doing, and they're licensed. The ones that are very aggressive over the telephone, they're only in it for one reason, and we know that it's just for your money.
Absolutely. How about tech support scam? I hear that's making the rounds as well. People are intimidated by computers sometimes. They're having issues. They call up. It's like, if you're having problems with your computer, call this number. Let's talk a bit about that.
It's funny because Microsoft, because being the biggest company in the world, one of the biggest companies in the world, you think they have time to phone me or you any time of the day to say that you've got problems with your computer? Of course not. They don't. They don't have time at all. And the one question you have to ask yourself is, when someone does phone you and say, well, how do you know my computer is even broken, for that matter? And And what happens is it's a little bit of a scare tactic too, is because they'll throw in, if your computer doesn't have the proper virus software, then hackers will get in, not knowing, be announced to them that they're actually talking to a hacker themselves here. So what happens is they try and get the computer person to type in some configuration on the computer, and basically what happens is they want to get your IP address. And what they want to do is either they want to put malware, which is software and to kind of hijack your computer, and they want to obtain as much information as they can. Basically they want to take control of your computer. And we always say, you know what? Again, if you do have computer problems, and there are companies out there that call themselves Microsoft approved, but they're not. I always say to the consumers that phone my office, it says, take it to a local guy in town here, and he'll be able to fix it for you. It's going to cost you a little bit more, but you know you're going to have it done right. It's here local, and of course it's under warranty, and you'll be able to have peace of mind.
How about some of these fly-by-night contractors that come knocking on your door and they offer up a little bit of home improvement? But a lot of that can be a scam as well.
Lots of times, and using the pavement is a good example of that right now. As we approach warmer weather right now, and more spring renovations are being tackled. Driveways are a big example of that right now. You get an example of somebody with an unmarked van who's down the street putting asphalt down on a driveway, and they'll come to your door and say, hey, listen, we've just finished a job down the street, and we wanted to know whether you want to have your driveway done. And be careful of that sort of thing, you know, because of the fact that you don't know who these people are, you don't know what grade of asphalt it is, for that matter, you don't know how much they're going to charge. So stay away from that as much as you possibly can. And with home contractors, again, they use unmarked vans, and they don't have an office. They use a laptop as their office. And a lot of times too is they're fly-by-nights, as you said, because they're in so quickly and out so quickly, and they want to get as much money as they possibly can. And please don't give them any deposit until you sign something on paper.
Yeah, I was going to ask, let's say at the average concrete driveway where the rebar is around $10,000, they say, I want $7,000 right up front before we even start.
I always tell the consumers a 3-3-3 rule: 3 before, 3 during, and 3 after. It provides that incentive for that contractor to make sure that they get the job done.
Now, what about the bank investigator scam? That's interesting.
That's very slick. That's a very slick one. It involves more than one person.
Okay.
And again, it goes back to the banking thing, where somebody from the bank supposedly phones you up and says, well, we have some illegal activity going on with your account, and we want to direct you to a bank investigator. And what happens is that they're going to give you the legitimate number of the bank investigator, the legitimate number, but it gets rerouted, because what happens is that they buy that number, and the next thing you know, before they hang up, the other person comes onto the line and says, hi, I'm the bank investigator. I'm here to take care of the situation that you've spoken with that person earlier. Mm-hmm. And it's a 2-person job, basically. An employee from the bank, and then somebody who represents themselves as a bank investigator. It's very slick. And the scammers do a lot of practicing to get this done, and they make it look really legit. They do it in the early morning hours before the banks are even open. That's how they do it.
And when we're just waking up sometimes early in the
I
morning,
know,
too.
and a lot of times we don't have our ball bearings straight, you know, and all of a sudden you just say yes to everything.
Ron, how often should we change our online passwords, and what kind of passwords should we avoid? Like maybe using our birthdays, perhaps?
That's a good thing too, but make sure you add an asterisk or a comma or a punctuation mark, or to kind of mix it up with an uppercase or a lowercase a letter. Please do it every 90 days. We notice that some people who buy a laptop, say an iPad or a desktop, they'll just kind of like overshadow the password, and they'll just leave it open. And some people actually use the password as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or admin, or even the word password, and some of these scammers are pretty good at figuring out trying to go into the minds of people of passwords. So to summarize your question, every 90 days is a good time to change your password.
You also have a scam tracker on the Better Business Bureau website.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
On our website, www.bbb.org/Calgary, we have information for people who feel that they've been scammed or frauded or have suspicious activity happening with them. We encourage them to leave information about that so people like you and I can look at that information for our own purposes.
Ron Riemann, accredited business coach with the Lethbridge branch of the Better Business Bureau. Thanks a lot for joining me in studio
Hal, it's
today.
a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You bet. On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.